dig deep, go to your soul, go to your heart, go to your pain, go to that thorn, find that thorn in the beauty. Because I'm going to come back to my original point. If you make something beautiful without a thorn, you'll realize eventually it's not beautiful, that it needs the thorn. So you need the pain, you need that hard, sharp thing that that you go, oh, wouldn't life be nice if we just didn't have the thorn? No, find the thorn. That's what I'm saying. Find the heartbreak, find the stuff that makes you cry, makes you angry, makes all that stuff come up. Because without that, you have soulless, heartless work.
This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte.
Exploring the challenges of the creative call
so that you can claim your own path
and make your life a work of art.
It's another episode. It's another year. We are in the new year of recording. And, well, it's been a while since we talked. We've been on a little bit of a break. Although you might not notice in the episode release, Evan went away. I was still in my hometown now. I guess it's my hometown. Not really, but I'm wandering here, Evan. I'm wandering. Okay, well, I don't know what we're going to talk about today. This is a not so serious episode. We decided we'd get right into it. Something that I've been thinking about a little bit is, the way the world has changed since I was young, like a teenager young, and how art has changed a lot, and how there's been something that's been taken from it, and there's a crying out and a calling for it to come back. And when I was younger, I took it for granted because it was just there. And I'm sure in my time, even people who were before me might have seen that coming, because I don't think it started I don't know if it started when I was a little kid. It might have actually started sometime before I was even born. But I really want to talk about beauty and how beauty is such an essential part of art. And when you take beauty out of art and you stop appreciating it, what you end up is with soulless crap that's just absolute garbage. And beauty is this, it's a rose and a thorn, because, it's one of those things where beauty is one of those things where it can be a thorn because we never feel like we're beautiful enough. We never feel like the art is beautiful enough. And sometimes beauty can almost cause you a kind of pain because you don't have it yourself, or you want it and you can't get it. But there's something about that that's very important. And I think it's important to admire beauty. I actually think it's a really important thing, because beauty is equivalent to things like health and just aesthetics and design and creation. And it's care. Beauty comes in care. And the relationship to beauty in art is vital. And when you try to go, well, it doesn't matter, it's okay, it's irrelevant, like you end up with bland, vanilla, boring, soulless shit. And that's what we're seeing, I think, with some of our art mediums. We're seeing that definitely in the movie industry. We're definitely seeing it in the music industry. We've seen it pop up in literal art, especially with modern art, and I think that there's a there's a point where it's kind of interesting where you say, oh, well, the art is the white wall. It's just the blank white wall. That's the art. And there's a certain kind of appreciation in that for a moment where we can go, oh yeah, right. We're so used to seeing a painting on the wall that we forgot that the wall itself holds the painting, and there's beauty in that. But after a while, it's just a fucking white wall. You know what I mean? It's a soulless white wall. It's just, it doesn't mean anything anymore. But then when art goes, well, that's the new standard. The white wall is the new standard. It's soulless. It's garbage. And I think that, for me moving forward this year, I'm going to pass it on to you here, Evan. I want to hold myself and others to a higher standard in their creativity. I mean, put your heart into it. Yeah, like feel the pain. Art should feel, there should be a little bit of pain. There should be a thorn. You can't have the rose without the thorn. You gotta have both elements. And when you cut one out and you just try to, you try to make the world soft everywhere, nothing is soft enough anymore, because the hardness of the world is actually what makes the softness recognizable.
Oh man, you opened up a lot of cans, a lot of worms. And there's a lot of things that are going through my head right now that we could touch on. I mean, the thing of beauty, I mean, that's a big thing for an artist, but it's a big thing for anyone in their life, really. And the importance of beauty, it's one of those things, because beauty is something that you're struck by. Mm-hmm. It's something that happens to you. It's a little bit out of your control. And I always love those kinds of things when it comes to art. And it's always what I'm teaching. It's like, we're trying to go to a place where you're a little bit out of control, where it's not, and we're intentionally trying to create the conditions for that to happen. Right. And because that's where something transformative happens. It doesn't happen in the place where we're in control. And beauty is one of those things where we're not in control. And there's something about it that it's like this unearned thing, which is part of the beauty of beauty, is that there's something of that you might call grace that's involved with when you're struck by beauty, because it's unearned. You've done nothing to sort of deserve it in a type of a way. It's just like it happens, and you're in the presence of it, and you're hit by it, and it does something to you, right? Like, and that's, and art is trying to occupy that space as well. Mm-hmm. I think coming into that thing, what you're saying about, a lot of things with modern art and things like that is like with the white wall, what that makes me think of is like, okay, that can say a certain kind of thing. But this is part of my issue with a lot of, and this isn't just an issue in art, it's actually a deeper issue than that. It's because it's just a reflection of something that's going on with us on a bigger level. Mm-hmm. And it's that, and you sit around, it's like, oh yes, this is, it reminds us of the reflection, and it becomes an analytical process, right? It becomes an intellectual process, as opposed to that being struck by something, and it moves something, it shifts something in you, that even it can sometimes be uncomfortable, it can be overwhelming, it can make you cry, but it does something to you. And a lot of art has become too much of an intellectual exercise, too just intellectually stimulating, and it's like, okay, like, look, that has its value, and that can be fun in its own way, but I want to be moved. I want to be transformed by the art that I see. And we seem to have lost that sense of value in that kind of thing. Like it's all about feeding the desire of the intellect, right? But that's actually a very shallow thing that we've confused as being a very deep thing, right? But the deepest things are the things that are a little bit ineffable, indescribable, the things that leave us without words, and there's great art, I think, is able to do both of them. Like, it can hit us on multiple levels and multiple places. And, and there are people who are certainly still committed to trying to do those things, but we are in a time where it's a lot of style over substance, or, definitely within film, I would say it's like the spectacle over substance, which is like, hey, film is supposed to give you spectacle. I want a bit of spectacle when I see a film, but it's like it can't be in replacement of substance. Like, I need both of those things in order for it to be meaningful. And I actually watched a movie recently that it surprised me. I was really, like, I thought it was going to be good. I was like, yeah, this will probably be a decent little movie, but it was much more than what I thought it was going to be. And I don't know if you've seen Ad Astra. It's a Brad Pitt movie. It's like a space movie. That really spoke to me in terms of what it was dealing with. Very almost mythological in the way that it tells its story, because it's a story about fathers and sons. Really, like it's actually a story about masculinity too. In a very sort of, again, thought-provoking but yet very moving kind of way. And I was really, I like, since I've watched it, it's just been kind of rattling around inside me a little bit, which is, for me, that's a sign of like, okay, there's something really beautiful about the way in which they did this.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen that movie, so I don't remember the details. Otherwise,
It's not that old though.
Yeah, I see a lot of movies, Evan. See a lot of movies, and then I forget certain details about certain ones if they don't really stand out to me. Which, I mean, I'm like, I don't even really remember seeing it, but I kind of do. So I'd have to watch it again to appreciate what you're talking about. But I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm just saying that, sometimes there's a lot of good movies. They don't hit you until sometimes you watch them again at a later point in your life. And it depends where you're at. Speaking of beauty, well, let me come back to this one point of like unearned. I do think that there's a certain amount of beauty that is unearned. I think there's a certain amount of it that is by design and it's well thought out. Like when I think of architecture, which is something that I've always appreciated, I do think that there's a certain amount of like an architect like looking at something and recognizing this will be more aesthetically beautiful if I round the curve, as opposed to like doing it easily. An easier would be a 90-degree corner, right? But like if I round it out, it'll look better in this scenario. You look at a lot of modern architecture. Like, I mean, I was in, just for audience members, like I was in a drafting and design program in high school. I was going to be an architect. That was my plan. And at about 15, and then I found filmmaking and I changed course. And it was because I went away that summer. I made a film and I just decided, wow, this is what I really want to do. And I'm going to do that. But ever since kind of this young passion for architecture, I always kind of pay attention to it in the background. And, there's a commoditization that's happened with architecture where it's like, things have become about, well, let's make this look good, but we'll use all the cheapest, shittiest materials. And it just falls apart in a few years. And that's where like substance dies. And it's like, it's true. Beauty is only really recognized timelessly if it has substance. So like if you look at like, when I went to England, I was walking around in some of these small towns and just like looking at the beauty of the architecture, the way things were put together. It wasn't designed like it is today, but there's a solidness to it, and even the things that were destroyed, like even the ruins of old like buildings or castles or whatever, there was still something that was still standing about them. And you were like, wow, that's just so beautiful. Even in its falling apart, it's still beautiful. Whereas you look at like modern architecture, when it falls apart, it doesn't fall apart like old English architecture. If it's moldy and fucking wet and dirty and gross, and like you see the decrepit brown just destroy, you know what I mean? It's like, and yeah, I mean, someone could look at that and say, well, that's kind of beautiful in its own right, in its own right. But also, if you breathe in the toxic shit that's in there, you'll die. Like you won't, if you hung out in the ruins of an old castle, you won't. Like, there's something about the materials we use in our art that matters too, right? And that I think that that translates into other things. And I think that like right now I look at film's a big passion of mine as well, obviously. And we're obsessed with CGI, and we're obsessed with AI. We're just obsessed with the new technology. And I think that I hope, I mean, I really do hope that generations in the future will look back at this time and be like, oh yeah, that's when they were obsessed with CGI. That's when they were like, remember when you look back at the 80s and they were obsessed with the synthesizer? Like, it's the same shit, right? We're just obsessed with some stupid tech that we think is the greatest thing ever. And those of us that are paying attention are like, well, it's not that great. I mean, it's great, but like, you know, like good job, but like that's not what really stories and movies are about. It's a tool. It's a tool. And so now everything like, oh, well, where's the CGI? What's going to happen? And the thing is like, I do think with the movie, and a TV show for that matter, because movies and TVs have kind of become on par. And you could even argue that TV has become better than movies in certain aspects as well. But at the end of the day, yeah, we want stories about fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, masculinity, femininity, love, what is real romance? What is friendship? That's what we really care about. That's the substance. And if you cut any of that out or try to go without that and skip to the synthesizer, I'm going to use that as an example, CGI, if you skip to that step and just say, hey, none of this matters, let's just make it look flashy, make it look fancy, yeah, you end up with this shallow, heartless, soulless shit, and it ends up just like the white wall. It might look beautiful, but it's that kind of stuff that like it won't be timeless, it'll be forgotten, and it's going to rot, and when it rots, it's going to look ugly, And, I'd say like anybody who listens to this show, I mean, maybe you're a first time listener, and if this is your first episode, welcome. But anybody who listens to this show, I hope that this is a bit of a calling for you to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. I mean, and why fucking not? Look at all your peers who are just fucking going and just trying to do the shallow thing to get what they want, to look cool, to look good, to do what's in, to copy. Be that person that fucking digs in. Like go down to your soul, find something that matters, pull that out into your story and use all the CGI shit that they use too, but do it with some fucking heart and some soul. And don't let your work end up being this fucking white wall garbage. Let it be something that's timeless, something that's a story that we can refer to that, that's what's going to last. That's what's going to matter. And if you can put it through the lens of this beautiful CGI and stuff that we have, then I think you can create a really interesting thing. Mm-hmm. But I think if you skip that step, you're just going to fall into, the mindless NPC kind of thinking that a lot of people do, the programmed matrix of thought. And you will just be the garbage of your time that literally gets thrown out after it's done. And if you have any appreciation for yourself and your legacy and your art, I would say that you should dig deep, go to your soul, go to your heart, go to your pain, go to that thorn, find that thorn in the beauty. Because I'm going to come back to my original point. If you make something beautiful without a thorn, you'll realize eventually it's not beautiful, that it needs the thorn. So you need the pain, you need that hard, sharp thing that that you go, oh, wouldn't life be nice if we just didn't have the thorn? No, find the thorn. That's what I'm saying. Find the heartbreak. Find the stuff that makes you cry, makes you angry, makes all that stuff come up. Because without that, you have soulless, heartless work.
That's a good run, buddy. I like it. No, always about just digging a little bit deeper and getting to what's really at the heart of things. Because even I find within our storytelling mediums, and particularly with like the media, like film and television, even the stuff that's supposed to be the substantive part of it I also find to be very shallow. It's very of the moment, very political, very sort of culture war whichever side of the culture war, you may or may not find yourself on, but it's all about this. And I'm like, guys, this is all like, what's underneath all of this shit? Like, that's to me the thing, like, that's the connective tissue that especially storytelling is supposed to serve, right? Is to find that the connective strands between us and to see past a lot of the stuff. But like, it's, again, I see it as part of this thing of like, yeah, no, we've settled for this thing that our intellect sort of think is the deep thing, right? But the ultimate thing is, does it do something to you, right? Does it do something to you that's out of your control? And that's part of the problem, is that you see a lot of stuff. It's like, oh, look, it's talking about this issue right now, and they're taking an opinion and a stance on it. But the problem is that it's still divisive. Yeah. You know, I've even heard, like, I've seen interviews with showrunners and who've just said basically like, well, fuck you to the audience. Like, this is what you know, like getting in. It's like, look, you can do that. You're free to do that. If that's your game and you want to do that, fine. But just know that it's not going to be that castle that stands the test of time. Time is going to wear that thing down into the fucking ground. As opposed to the great stories, which it's like they don't get caught up in that kind of stuff. They keep going deeper to the heart of the thing, you know, because all of the lot of stuff that we see in like the culture wars, they're symptomatic of something else. They're symptomatic of something much deeper, and that deeper thing is something that we're all connected to, that we all relate to, and it's like, that's what a great artist has to do. You got to dig into that shit. At least for me, that's what I'm interested in seeing. And I want to make one other comment on something that you were saying, which is that, you know, you're talking about like without the thorn, right? Like if it doesn't have the thorn, and it makes me think of I'm not super well versed in the story, but from what I know of the story of Persephone and Hades. And Hades steals Persephone, who's the daughter of Hera, I think. Zeus's wife, the goddess Hera. She was Hera, right? And Hera protected Persephone, like basically and she's this beautiful daughter, this god, you know, and she was kept away from everything. And Hades kind of just goes and nabs her and keeps her in the underworld with him for a long time. And eventually he lets her come back, right? And she's changed forever. But there's like, it kind of sounds like a weird, dark story. But when you start to probe into it a little bit, and just with what you're saying, it's like, well, yeah, there's a certain kind of wisdom, because Hades is also a god. Hades also has a wisdom. Like, he's not just there to be some sort of villain. He's saying, it's like, well, your daughter is not whole. Like, she has not been exposed to what reality is, to the full extent of reality, of like, she's being kept in all this light and life, and she's never seen death. She doesn't know the completeness of things, right? And it is a story about wisdom, because there's something about, or it's like when she's allowed to come back, I think it's something like there's a seed that like he puts under her tongue or something, like there's something interesting like that. But she's like, it's there with her always, right? That she comes back and it's never the same. But there's in terms of what you're talking, that relationship between the, you know, beauty and, I guess to a certain level, maybe ugliness or maybe pain or something like that. Like, I think that because, beauty often comes with it can connect us to a certain kind of pain when we're exposed to it, which is an interesting response that we can often have. Like, sometimes we can just fully embrace it and enjoy it and appreciate it, but sometimes it can bring tears, right? And it's like, what is that response when beauty can just like bring us to our knees? I mean, I have some potential ideas on that. Some of them are relatively new ideas, which I just heard, but I'm going to hand it off to you.
Okay, there's a couple things I want to just comment on this. So like, there's a certain quality touched where it's like untainted, uncorrupted. It's pure, right? And that's something that I think that as society and culture, it's actually good for us to try to do. Like we do this in certain expressions, like with children, like we try to give children a childhood. I don't know if people realize that it's a relatively new concept. Like children didn't have childhoods like a few hundred years ago. Like that didn't happen. Like you didn't really have a childhood. You were just kind of put to work. You were like on the farm. You were fucking like you were learning pretty quick, and you were like a little kid adult, kids today, they're protected from the realities of the world. I'd say now we have the internet coming in, which is kind of doing something different to our children, which is, some parents are aware of it and some aren't, but some parents are trying to protect their kids from it because there's a darkness that comes with this internet, right? Like you're opening yourself up to like some really, you're opening yourself up to, man, you don't even know what's out there. I don't even know what's out there.
As adults, we're not even supposed to be exposed.
We're not, yeah, exactly. I haven't said as adults, we're not even supposed to be exposed to this. And it's like, there is an ugliness to the world that it's better you don't see. And when I'm talking about the thorn, I'm not talking about ugliness. I want to be very clear about that. I'm not talking about darkness either, and darkness in the reference of evil. I'm not talking about that shit. I'm talking about pain. What I'm talking about is specifically when you grab the rose and you prick your hand and then you bleed. It was so beautiful you had to pull it and grab it so you could have it for yourself. But as you pulled it, you cut your hand and you realize I'm bleeding holding this rose and it hurts. But you wanted it so badly you had to grab it. I'm talking about the pain. I'm not talking about darkness or evil or any of that shit. Because darkness and evil can corrupt beauty in such a rotten, poisonous way. And I think that there's a certain relationship to darkness and beauty today that is not correct. It's not a good, healthy relationship to beauty. We do not want to corrupt beauty. We don't want darkness and evil to start consuming beauty. That's not what we want. And we don't want a balance of beauty and evil. We want a balance of beauty and pain. And beautiful people have privilege. It's just one of those things in our society. And you can love it and hate it, whatever, but it's the reality. If you're a beautiful person, you get privilege. It's just what it is. And the more beautiful you are, the more privilege you'll probably get. But while you're beautiful, you will also experience less pain. And they say beauty is a great curse for this reason. Because people with beauty have an ignorance to the world that the rest of the people don't. And though we admire them, though we want them and like to pluck them like the rose and have them to be ours and have them to love us, in our flawed imperfections, it's all relative to wherever you are, right? You can find beauty in all sorts of things. But the point is that there's something about them that is just so childlike and ignorant and unaware and oblivious. And they don't know, right? Because the problem is when you have this type of pretty privilege, beautiful privilege, right? The world is literally parting the waters for you. You're walking through the world like everything's so easy. Why is everybody struggling? Why is everybody complaining? Like life's so good. Like life's beautiful. And they're, and they'll get online and they'll have some show and they'll talk about some like ancient wisdom and they'll think that people are listening to them because they're talking about ancient wisdom. And really they're just like, wow, they're just so beautiful. I just like looking at them. They could talk about anything and I just want to look at them, right? Like that's the reality of beauty. And they're oblivious. They actually think what they say matters and that they're saying something smart. I'm just saying, like, if you take this to the end, like if you take this to the most beautiful person who has not had any pain and has been like Persephone, totally protected from the world, they're probably quite arrogant. They're probably lack a lot of sympathy in most times. They probably lack a lot of empathy. Not because they're a bad or evil or dark person, but simply because beauty helps you escape a lot of pain. Which brings me back to my point of fucking art. We need art because most of us are in pain, and art helps us escape pain. There's a reason why the movie industry flourished the most during the Great Depression. Nobody had a dollar. They were selling off all their assets. They had nothing. They could barely eat. But they said, people always have a nickel or a dime for a movie. That's fucking incredible. Because a movie is like an escape, and that's what beauty is beauty's like an escape. And I'm not talking about necessarily it always just looking pretty, but there's the ideal of love is so beautiful to us that we will do just about anything for it, And if a movie is the medium of the day in which we can watch a love story, people will find a dime or a nickel. At the time that was what a movie was. They will find that to go see and have this beautiful experience. And you think about it as an artist. Well, what am I doing? You're doing the same fucking thing they were doing then. You're just doing it now, and it looks different, but it's the same idea. People always have a nickel or a dime for a movie, but they always have a nickel or a dime for beauty.
I think that, there's, because I see like the whole thing of, if we're using like sort of like the rose or whatever, it's a good symbol. As far as, especially when it comes to talking about people specifically, like beauty does bring with it privilege. And I think it's like one of the highest in terms of what's been studied on what gives people privilege. The two highest things are beauty and money. Like economic class are the two biggest things that determine sort of your quote unquote privilege in life. But like, I always have like a little bit of a pushback in a certain kind of way because I never want the conversation or I think it can be dangerous for us to dehumanize somebody because of something that they were just born. Like you're born with beauty. It's like you're still a human being. Like it doesn't mean that, like, yeah, there's probably certain things that have come to you easier, but wisdom should share with us as well. It's like you don't have to scratch too far on the surface to discover some pain in a person's life, right? And beauty does come with it there is a certain kind of a pain, and there's also because human beings, we're falling apart from the moment that we're born, as Alan would say. And the loss of that beauty, that's a hard fall. It is. Yeah. If you've been riding on that for a long time in your life, and so there's a certain level in which I have compassion for that life to an extent. There's something, this conversation about beauty is very interesting because it does, you brought up the word love because beauty there is a kind of love with beauty. And that beauty and why we look for it and why we seek it, even though it's something that you can't really manufacture it. You can't really manufacture beauty. Again, like you can maybe create the conditions for it. Once again, just like in art, you can create the conditions for the thing to happen. I can decide to, climb up to a peak to watch the sunset somewhere, right? But like I don't have control over the sunset. And what it's actually going to look like when I see it. But I know there's probably something that's going to be there, right? And there are these things that in a way we kind of know it might give us that glimpse. And that desire is a very interesting thing because I think that's something that we all have. That's one of those connective threads. Like we all love and crave and seek beauty, right? And why is that? Why do we, like, what is this thing within us that needs it? Like, it's not like we just want it. Like, we also want it, but we also need it. fills us. It gives us something that is necessary to us functioning in life. I'm going to throw this thing out there. Okay. I've been listening to this audiobook. I don't typically do audiobooks, but I get, so many hours free on Spotify, I guess, because of my plan. So I've been listening to this book called Everything Belongs by Richard Rohr. And literally on my way over here, listening to this book, he was talking about this concept, which I've never exactly heard this before. Not exactly. But he calls it primal guilt. And it's this something that most of us are walking around with. And it's not about any little thing that we've done or action that we took that may or may not have caused harm to somebody. But it's this feeling that we have of guilt for having not fully lived. That we haven't fully lived. And there was more to it than that. That's a bit escaping me right now. But there's something about that really struck me. I had to pause it for a second and just go hang on, I just got to sit with that for a second. Because there was something that really that I connected to with that, right? And it's coming to my mind, not just because I just heard it, but there's something about this, what we're talking about here in this conversation about beauty and how it relates to that, because there's something about beauty that helps us, even if just for a moment, resolve that problem.
Well, some interesting stuff coming up in this conversation. I'll say that for sure. I will say that for sure. I want to set the record straight on one detail for sure. If you're beautiful, you don't owe anybody anything. When it relative to beauty, there's probably someone even more beautiful than you. And beauty is always escaping us, whatever little bit of it that we have. You don't owe anybody anything, and your pretty privilege doesn't make you a bad person either. And nobody should make you feel bad about that. If you were born blessed with physical attractive beauty, you're just walking around, you don't even know why you have it, you don't even know why everybody seems to admire it, like it, whatever. Don't feel bad about it. Just embrace it. It's yours. You gifted it. You were given it. It's yours to do what you will with. And also another thing about that I want to set straight. Just because you're beautiful doesn't mean that you're arrogant or mean or any of this stuff. It just tends to be that you will find, as you lose your beauty, that you will discover you were more arrogant than you would have liked. You weren't as humble as you would have liked. You were maybe not as compassionate or caring as you would have wanted yourself to be. But it wasn't your fault, because we have a world that, in a way, it's not asking that of you. You know what I mean? It's just not asking that of you. And I've seen this a lot with really beautiful women. The amount of people that are trying to take advantage of them is fucking incredible. So that you're walking around, if you're in that echelon of top tier beauty, you're walking around, of course, with a guard up all the time, because you have people who are trying to use you, exploit you, take advantage of you, do all that. You have to have those walls up. If you had too much empathy, too much compassion, and if you're too soft and you didn't have enough thorns around you, everybody would pluck you. You understand? So some of the most beautiful people have the most thorns. It makes sense. It absolutely makes the most sense. In fact, let me take this further. Some of the kindest people, some of the best, wisest, most brightest people of our time have the most thorns, because they are also the types that get plucked. The more you are desired, the more you have to have the kind of sharp edges to yourself. It's just a part of this world. Because we have these takers and these exploiters and these manipulators and these dark, shadowy types that are in this world. We have the people who are not just like not born ugly, but earned ugly. Right? They're just trolls. They just have gone down the dark path and they went into the ditch and they decided this is where I live and this is who I am. And anything beautiful that exposes this of me, I'm going to destroy. And you know, the internet is filled with these types. And I think secretly they don't want to be. And what I found, I did live streaming for a little bit. And what I found with the trolls is not everybody. But I'd have sometimes people come onto my stream and they'd say the most fucking terrible shit. And I'd be like, you're better than that. Don't do that. And they would just be like, oh yeah. And I look at them like a horrible person. I looked at them as someone who's in great pain. Here's the thing. I'm not the most beautiful person. I'm not the most ugly person. But I've experienced both sides of that coin at various times in my life. And I know what it's like to feel unwanted, unaccepted. People don't like you, you're fucking invisible and nobody notices you. And I've also seen what it's like to be the fucking person in the spotlight that everybody wants a fucking piece out of you and everybody's trying to get something out of you and everybody wants you to be their friend and a part of their life and to accept them and include them. I know what both sides of those look like. It's caused me to build a lot of empathy, a lot of compassion, but I've also got to see from both sides that, yeah, like there's been times where I've been far too arrogant and far too careless, but I've had to learn, well, you know, I've thought a lot about this and I've been like, well, of course I had those thorns because I was protecting myself, because like I've also been taken advantage of because that's what happens. And, you know, a lot of people will ask for beauty. They'll say, I want beauty. I want these things, right? Like secretly you're asking for it. Don't lie to yourself. Don't be a bullshitter. Secretly you want that, right? There's a part of us that we're all longing to be loved and desired and matter and to be meaningful, right? We're all secretly or not so secretly looking for that. The thing is, the more you get what you want, just watch, the more thorns you'll find you'll grow. It is what it is. It's the reality of this world. And when you've experienced like the ugly duckling syndrome, as they call it, which is, for those who don't know or not aware of this, the ugly duckling syndrome tends to show up in people where they were kind of ugly or unwanted or undesired or a nerd or something outside of whatever in their youth. But then as they mature, they come into their beauty and their form. The ugly duckling has a bit of a different relationship to beauty and how they relate to it than somebody who is, say, born with it, who just ever since they were born, it's like, wow, so cute, so beautiful, so pretty, so whatever, right? And the ugly duckling syndrome is, it like they tend to have some kind of empathy that can come with that because they understand the pain of not being wanted and accepted. But also like, there's a lack of boundaries they can have, where they don't realize like they don't realize how admired they are until all of a sudden like the world starts showing them they're admired. So you'll see this with people where they act out, and you see this with movie stars and music stars and stuff like that, where like look at a lot of like these musicians, like when you look at them as like a person, you're like, it's not a very attractive person. But fucking, can they play a guitar? Can they sing? Holy shit. And now all of a sudden the world's just fucking wants them, you know, just because they're a star, they're up there on stage, they're in the lights, and there's something about that taps into this very deep part of us that's like, wow, I fucking want that too. And I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of what you're a part of. And beauty is transcendent in that way, where it goes far beyond physical appearance. And I think that's ultimately what I want this conversation to be directed towards, which is that we've talked a lot about beauty and we've talked a lot about aesthetics and physical and the external beauty, but there is a beauty far more profound that comes in from internally. It's a presence. It's an air of behavior. It's a totally it's a thing. And I think it's a form of authenticity combined with like confidence and some type of fearlessness. There might be another little ingredient in there. I'm not sure at this moment, but I would say those are three that seem to be in it. And when I look at a rock star, I look at somebody who's like, they're singing something, their music is fucking true. Something about it is just resonating. It's fucking real. It's there. It's something is connecting there. But then they have a kind of fearlessness. They're willing to get up in front of a cloud of faceless people, stand before them all and present their truth to them. Like, how fucking fearless can you fucking be, right? And not only is there truth, and the thing is that, like, many people have tried and many people have died doing it. But this person lives, and we fucking look at that one who lives and we go, I want to be a part of that one that lives. Because many people stand in front of the crowd, speak the truth, and they get fucking stoned, metaphorically and literally. So anyway, I wanted to kind of bring the conversation into this internal expression of beauty that's actually even more important.
I think that we've been touching on that to a certain degree, like in the whole thing of like the substance, right? Where you're talking about, it's like, look, like that we're getting caught on what we think beauty is. Yeah. And that's the style and the spectacle. And everything. It's like, oh, that's what the beauty is. It's like, no. That's the real beauty is in the substance of it. Mm-hmm. And then the spectacle is just a reflection of that thing, of the deeper thing, right? Like I'm a pretty skilled barista. Something I've learned to do. And I really love like sort of coffee and making beautiful coffee and stuff like that. And when I was first learning about doing it, and the guy who was teaching me, who was it's not something he just sort of fell into. He's just like, no, you know what? Like, being a great barista, that's my life. Like, I love coffee and this is what I'm doing. So I had a guy like this who was teaching me how to do this and how to like, okay. And so when it comes to creating like the art, like the beautiful latte art and stuff like that, I remember him telling me that the art is really just like what we're saying is like, it's just a reflection of the quality that has been poured into the drink. It's not actually what makes the drink good, but it's a reflection of everything else that you've done in terms of how you've dialed in your espresso shot and how well you've steamed the milk and all of the things are structural to the whole thing, and all the things that in many ways matter the most, right? In terms of how the thing actually tastes. But then at the end of it all, it's like, okay, you've done all of the things so that this coffee is going to taste great no matter how it comes out or no matter what it looks like. Sure, yeah. But then at the end, you create this beautiful flower or this heart or this butterfly or some, whatever you do, and you create this beautiful image at the end of it. And it just becomes this extra feast for the eyes, and then the sip happens. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? And it's like, we've gotten kind of focused on like, oh, this looks great on the eyes. Then you have a sip and you're like, this tastes like shit. It looks like something that's supposed to taste good, but it isn't. Yeah. Man, that sounds so reflective of a lot of our Western culture. But, that's, I think that's, I don't know where I'm going from this. There was something else I know I wanted to say in response to what you're saying. Yeah, the substance and yeah, that we have been, like there's ways in which we've been touching on that thing, and it's like, yeah, it's like it is always about going a little bit deeper. Like I think it's so easy for us to become distracted by a lot of things that look like they're really important, but they're actually not. Or like, again, they're things that are symptomatic of something bigger. And this is something that I myself see as being part of the bigger problem, something that we're trying to figure out how to come back to it. How do we come back to the things that actually really are important and really do matter? Because, and in many ways, this time that we're in is the perfect storm that, while it's very difficult and chaotic, I think is propelling us towards a place of wisdom. I hope, because we are in a time of such idiocy, in a time of such nonsense and propaganda and being focused on shit that doesn't matter. And there's a price to that. And we're all paying it, and we all feel it. We're all going like, what the fuck is going on right now? Why am I so stressed? Why am I so anxious? Why am I so angry? Why am I so like, and continuing to do things the way that we're doing them, we're just going to keep on seeing this isn't working. This isn't working. This isn't working. I still feel this way. And you persist in your folly to become wise to your folly. And I think that's what I think we're kind of in right now, where it's like we're really being brought into the heart of a lot of our, I guess, ignorance, just to put it, oversimplify it, but that's the best thing I got right now. Being brought into the heart of that thing so that we can become wise, so that we go, it's like, oh, okay. As much as there's a part of me that craves this thing, that wants this thing, that wants that distraction, that just wants to be focused on this thing and be angry about this thing and that thing. If I keep doing this, I'm just going to be fucking miserable. And if we keep doing this thing, we're just going to destroy ourselves. So what are the things that matter? What are the things that matter? And sometimes we have to learn it that way, right? But there's a profound learning that can happen that way.
You brought something up that really, I think, is so important to say, and it's come to this point here. We live in a culture of replacing things. We live in a culture of temporary, and that's part of the problem with art and beauty, is that you want, like, if you look at older generations, particularly my grandparents, like, they bought a fucking couch or a nice leather chair. That chair is still in the fucking family. That shit lasts. Great fucking wood, great construction, good materials. It might be a little bit worn. It might even be a little bit out of date, but that thing is not fucking going anywhere until someone destroys it. But you look at even the chairs that we're sitting on, right? Like, these are pleather fucking pieces of shit. And I'm like, the other day, I'm like, I got to tape them up, replace them. Like, these aren't going to last, but they're holding us up. That's about as good as they're fucking going to do, right? And the thing is like, that's how our world is built right now. It's like, they look nice when they were new, but then they get worn in a little bit, and the ugliness starts to show. And that's just kind of how this world is right now. And, I would say that, if any of this conversation is calling out to you as a listener, I would say, like, go back and listen to older wisdom. Like, look at that and go, like, you know what? I know everybody, all my friends and everybody is getting the new best thing. Don't fucking do it. Get the thing that's going to last. Get the thing that's going to, get the thing that's going to have some legacy. I have a leather jacket that I got or bought when I was like in my early 20s. I still wear it to this day. Like that it's worn, but people were like, that's fucking cool. Irreplaceable. You can't make it like that. The sun wear and the rain that got on it, a couple nights have worn in the leather a certain way that discolored it, and but it looks fucking authentic, and because it's a real leather jacket that has just lasted the fucking test of time. And people say, oh, leather, it's so bad, but it's like, I'm fucking saving the environment. How many fucking shitty pleather jackets died on the way between my jacket and that? How many gotten. Yeah, made out of oil and plastic and all this other shit. You know what the thing is that I think we are in an awakening too. Beauty has a way of, when you really get real about it, it has a way of awakening you to the bullshit that is this world, which is all this fake beauty, all this fucking plastic bullshit that's put on. And sometimes people, you know, although some do it tastefully, and I can appreciate that, some don't. And they plug it into their bodies. Like, hey, I'm just going to turn myself into this thing, into this person, into a Kardashian or some shit. It's like, fucking take a step back. You know what I mean? And just like, the other thing too is like, don't let the world tell you that you're not enough, like as you are. You know what I mean? Like, and the thing is that if you tap into your presence, you tap into your true expression, you tap into qualities, beautiful qualities, you become attractive. You will become beautiful. Zig Ziglar, who is a motivational speaker, you know, he's somebody I listen to a lot. There's a bunch of them that I could refer people to, but you know, he used to, you know, if he used to talk about, if you want to attract the things you want, you have to become attractive. But he wasn't talking about literally fucking inject yourself with plastic to become, he was talking about build fucking qualities that make you attractive. You know, do things that are attractive. Do, like, be kind to people, you know, rise above your emotions. Put care into the shit that you do, you know, that type of stuff. And I think, you know, I don't know, you go through life and you know, you try all sorts of things and you try to figure out like what works, what doesn't work. And, you know, I'm guilty of everything. I've tried, you know, to essentially, you know, do the shortcuts and skip lines and certain things in certain areas of my life and see if that could get me the rewards. And maybe it does in some ways, but then it always kind of like fades out. What I've come to at this point in my life is like, just do things that, you know, you'll be proud of, that'll matter, that, you know, in like 5, 10, 20 years, you're going to look back and be like, I'm glad I did that. I really think that we should be present in the moment, but we should also have this like 20-year version of ourselves ahead of ourselves, always going, hey, would we like this in 20 years? Are we going to be proud of this, what we're about to do right now in 20 years? Are we going to like, you know, and try to like look to that person. And if you don't know that person's voice, start talking to people who are 20 years older than you and start asking them like what matters to them. What do they care about? What do they regret? What do they love that they did? Then go fucking do that, you know? And I think we should live presently, but I also think we should look into the past and we should go like, what did people do that made this possible for me? What did they do that worked? What was great that they did? You know, and maybe even further, like maybe even 100 years, 200 years, 1,000 years, whatever. Like look back and figure out what like everything is built on, right? That's my thought. I mean, and I don't know. It's, you know, it's a new year. There's new insights, and you know, and I just think that I'm sick of Evan. I guess I'm sick of people giving beauty a bad name. I'm sick of people like kind of almost calling it like some negative, like, oh, you're privileged, or like to have some benefit in life is like, you know, it's unfair. Fuck your unfairness. The whole world is unfair. Like I grew up in a world, one of the first things I fucking learned as a kid was the world is not fair. And you learn to fucking deal with that. And that makes you strong. That makes you better. That makes you more dynamic. That makes you fucking interesting. But if you live in a world where you think it's going to be fair, you're fucking delusional. You're out of your fucking mind. There's always going to be somebody prettier than you, more wealthy than you, more successful, more skillful, more something. Look up to them. Aspire to be that. Like there's so much in which you can grow and learn. You were not born perfect. You're born like, you know, you're born as a possibility. And you should be grateful for that. And if you don't like the cards you were dealt, that's just a problem with you. That's a problem you have with yourself. We all, you're dealt the cards you're dealt. Now play your fucking hand, right? And the thing is that to think that we don't want your hand played, to think that your hand doesn't matter, is just so, like, you're buying into the propaganda of this world. We need you to tell your story. We need you to show your art from your perspective, from your point of view. If we don't have your point of view, we don't have it. It's not there. Don't you understand? Like, yeah, I mean, we look at, like, I looked up to, like, well, not looked up, but just admired somebody, like, in my time, was like Brad Pitt. I just remember when he popped on the screen. I remember as a little kid, I remember seeing him and just being like, holy fuck, that guy, like, he's so cool. He's so good looking. He's just like, what the fuck is that? You know what I mean? And I was just like, I want to be that. I want that, you know? But the thing is like, that's him. That's his story. I'm my story. It's different. But doesn't, just because his story is admirable or whatever, I like it, or I like the way it looks, or whatever it is, doesn't mean that my story doesn't matter. I feel like we live in a time where we're being propagated with so much shit, and they're saying, well, this person's so great and you're so not because they're so great. And it's like, no, that's not true. That's just false, you know? And so I'd say, beauty in your own right, like, you do have to accept that, like, hey, look, maybe you're not going to be what, the most beautiful person is. And that's painful in a way. Like, I have empathy, like, just like anybody else. Like, I'd like to be the most beautiful person in the world. Part of me does. There's something about that seems fucking great. I'd like to be the biggest rock star in the world. I'd like to be the most famous, most wealthy person in the world. There's all of these things that, like, deep down you go, yeah, I wouldn't say no. But, like, we make our peace with that, and something about that brings out a kind of quality about us that's fucking incredible. And that's what the world really wants. That's what's kind of special, and not kind of, but it's what's special. So I it's just some things that, there's a lot of things. I'm going to pass it to you for a moment.
Well, I have some thoughts that I feel like I want to save for my closing thoughts. So maybe let's just talk about the beer for a second here, because you said something. I was like, you know what? I think you hit the nail on the head with something, and so.
Can you say it so we don't forget it?
Oh, well, it has to do with beauty. We're saying, and what we were talking about earlier about, like, why it comes with the pain. For me, there was a bit of a resolution that you ended up hitting on there, and on that relationship, right? But so that's what it has to do with. So anyhow, I'll guess you provided the beer today, so I'll hand it off to you.
Okay, I'll be quick and just introduce this, and then you can share your final thoughts. So this is called Dynamite Panther Hazy IPA, and it's by Batch 44 Brewery. So at the end of the year, if anyone listened to this episode, I had a dream where I had this panther who was like a friend and a pet and an ally. It was just like with me, walking along in life, and I had this, like, very vivid experience of it. Anyway, I saw this Dynamite Panther beer come up, and I was like, you know what? That's the one. It's got to be. So anyway, it's good. It's a very tasty beer, I find, Evan, and kind of flashy little can, but very flavorful.
Yeah, it's really tasty. And I'm just looking at the can now, and I just went, holy shit, 7.3% on this bad boy. It goes down really easy for how strong it is. Yeah. But Batch 44, great local brewery to us here. Again, we're not sponsored by them or anything like that. It's just support your local craft brewery if that is your thing. All right. Well, I'll say some things now. So for my closing comments, there was this thing that, at least for me, that came up about this, like, what is this relationship between beauty and pain? And not necessarily knowing exactly what it was. And then it seemed like you just kind of said it at a certain point there. And you said something like, when we're in the presence of beauty, it makes us aware of all the bullshit. Because real beauty, true beauty, substantive beauty is like a light that just fucking can cut through darkness. And it just puts things into perspective. And it has a way of making us see a lot of the shit that doesn't matter, that we've been carrying, that we've been making important, that we've, and it can be absolutely heartbreaking, right? But there's a kind of joy in it too, right? There's a kind of a joy that can happen in that type of heartbreak, because often in heartbreak, there's a heart open that happens at the same time, where we're aware of a darkness that we've been carrying. And actually the thought that I had forgotten about the whole thing of, primal guilt, this concept of primal guilt that I just, I'm just sort of wrapping my head around, of this thing of the guilt of having not fully lived. The extra part of that I was forgetting about is that what's contained in there is our thoughts and feelings of the people we are and the people that we are not. And that's a burden. That's a bit like, and the more I think about that, just even in this moment, it's like, yeah, that's a huge burden. I've heard that described as like, that's sort of in the story of like the tree of knowledge, right? And like what, and in our consciousness of what entered into our consciousness, that's actually part of that sort of concept of the fall, of what we deal with as human beings, is that we live with this knowledge of the people we are and the people we are not, and the ways in which we fall short. And that's a heavy, heavy thing that we walk around with, right? And beauty, and coming back to this thing of beauty as a thing of love and grace that kind of happens to us, and we're just suddenly hit with it, we're struck with it, and we didn't do anything in order for that thing to happen. It happened, and it's happening to us. And we can just be so overwhelmed by this pouring of love that the beauty is, that we didn't deserve. And it brings us to a place where we observe all of that burden that we've been carrying. And it allows us to finally maybe shed some tears over that thing that we're carrying with us. But at the same time, part of the beauty is that it's like, you don't need to be carrying that. You don't need to be carrying that. That burden isn't necessary, right? Because look at this. Just look at this. Be in wonder and awe of this thing that you get to see, you get to witness. You're participating in this thing, and how good that thing is, right? And there's a connection. You're not alien to it. Like there's a relationship that's there, that's deep, and it's intimate. That sunrise, that sunset, whatever it is, it's like you are connected to that thing, and it is connected to you in a way that kind of defies our logic. But there it is, and you're living it and you're feeling it.
You could have been talking about love, or you could have been talking about God. Everything you said is like, that's so much like beauty. Like there's something that I really do think is connected between love and God and beauty. They're like so the same fucking thing. They're all just somehow like one of a kind, like one of their own, like, and it's just, like when you love something or somebody, the way in which you look at it, I mean, I know for myself, the way in which I look at it is just so like in awe, just so wow. Like, and it's so far beyond, it's so far beyond like the physical realm too. It somehow the physical realm is enhanced by it, but it's not the thing. That's almost just the, it's like kind of the way you were describing a latte. It's just the fancy presentation of it, right? And it might not even be that fancy, but like, I look at people like people like love Star Wars or they love Lord of the Rings or something. Like I really truly believe they love it. They like appreciate it so much. They're just like, and I've had that experience with certain things too myself. And like even with the sport, I remember like soccer. I mean, I just loved playing soccer so much and I loved hockey so much. If a commercial that was stupid came on, I would be like glued to the television because I just wanted to see it because it was just like soccer. It was like, I just loved the whole idea of it. And I think that this is something that, if we, I guess I'll end it this way. This is something that I feel like, look, if you want to start kicking off the year and you really want to fucking access some good shit inside yourself, I mean, figure out what you love and figure it out through beauty. Figure out what like you just find beautiful and like awe striking, like kind of the way Evan was describing. And if you forget what he said, I'm going to re-listen to what you said because I feel like you described it the way it needs to be, where it's like, it taps into everything we fucking talk about: curiosity, interest. Beauty is one of those things. Like when you find something beautiful, you almost become obsessed with it. It's just like, I just love it. I just want to know everything about it. I want to like, and it becomes this kind of almost like you just, like when I found acting, when I found filmmaking, it was like that. I want to do this. I want to fucking, and you go as far as you'll go, but it gets you activated and motivated and driven. And I think it brings something out of you. And I think that's kind of the interesting thing about this conversation is that like beauty does that to us. It is awe-striking. And what it does is it activates something inside of us. And I think that activation is really what we're after in a way. I think it's something that makes us just like pay attention, and then all of a sudden we're just there, we're present, and maybe even fills in a vision for the future. I have had these moments, like even in acting class or watching a movie or something, where I had this awestruck moment where it's just like, wow, that was so fucking awesome. And yeah, it's the same way that beauty is. It's just, but would you describe that as beauty? I don't know if it's what it is. It was beautiful, and yeah, and I think it's an interesting topic. I mean, one of these things, like, as we explore, we've gone down this road, way of the artist, and we've just explored many different topics. This is one we've never really an avenue we've never really put a lot of focus on until now. And I'm really appreciating it because I feel like it's an important aspect of this journey. And there's something missing without it. Like it's almost essential, And I don't think you did say this a couple times or at least once in the conversation about not confusing beauty with what we think it is and intellectualizing it. I think that it's okay if you're awestruck to go and ask yourself, hey, is this beautiful? Because maybe that's what beauty is.
Thank you for listening in on our conversation today. We hope you found something helpful that you can carry forward with you. Head over to our website, wayoftheartist.com, for more free exclusive material and learn about the show. If you haven't already, please support us by subscribing to the show, sharing it with people you know, and keeping compassionate, creative conversation going.